10:15 here on ABC Newcastle and ABC Upper Hunter. You're with Scott Bevan. Thanks so much for your company. Now, when we hear the name Walter Burley Griffin, we tend to think of Canberra. After all, the celebrated American architect and designer is credited with planning the national capital. The lake in the middle of the city is even named after him. However, Walter Burley Griffin and his partner in life and planning, Marion Marnie Griffin, also had an interest in and designs on a part of Port Stephens. Now, the Griffins planned in effect a city, a New York down under, if you will, for North Arm Cove, but it never came to pass. So more than a century on, another architectural and planning couple, Dejan Simovic and Tatiana Juric-Simovic, is trying to revive the Griffins' vision. And it's not just a matter of history that drives Dejan and Tatiana. They see it as helping address present-day issues of land and housing shortages. So to tell us more about this, I'm joined on the phone by Dejan Simovic. Dejan, g'day. Thanks so much for your time.
Good day, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this interesting subject, I think.
How did Walter Burley Griffin come across North Arm Cove, and what grabbed him about the area?
Basically, he was looking for, Marion and him came to Australia and saw huge opportunity for this country and for this continent. And they basically saw similar opportunities like US, like America. And they wanted basically to find a place on the eastern coast that is going to provide similar opportunities like New York has for America, which is the entry point that has a links deep into the continent. New York is through the Hudson and the canals linked to the Great Lakes, and that is basically the reason for its economic boom and prosperity. So they were looking for a similar place in Australia on eastern coast to find a place that is having the easy access through the mountain range to the interior. And they found two places. One of them is Port Stephens, and within Port Stephens, they were looking for a good place for positioning the town, the place where to build it. And they found a promontory of North Arm Cove. At the time, they just named it Port Stephens City.
Goodness, so we could have almost had a New York down under at North Arm Cove.
That's exactly right. They were looking at the whole area. That it's not only North Arm Cove, so they were looking at a whole area of the Port Stephens. But best location to start with, from their point of view, was it's dry, it's a high area, it's rocky, it's solid, it's not very good for agriculture or other uses. So, and at the time it was pretty bare. There are pictures of, an area that is cleared one way or another. So, they found that this is a good location.
That's extraordinary. So this was the Griffins' vision. So what sort of plan did Walter and Marion devise for the North Arm Cove area?
Well, interesting part is that they have created a beautiful plan, and they were talking about a city that is right, correct, and basically place that is going to solve the problems of urban living by providing the people opportunity to live within the nature. And that's their principles for their planning were like that for other places. So they've done other projects across Australia, but that was the basic principle. And they have managed to realize, after it didn't happen in North Arm Cove or in Port Stephens, they have managed to realize that in Castle Craig in Sydney.
In Castle Craig on Middle Harbour in Sydney.
That's right. That's right. So that's basically what they had in mind.
Why did the plan never turn into reality at North Arm Cove, Dejan?
Marion has written the kind of biography, never published, but it's available online, about Marion and her and Walter's, life and work in Australia. She describes their professional activity here as a continuous fight with the bureaucracy. And well, this was one of the victims of the bureaucracy at the time. And basically, that's it. Probably at the time, Port Stephens was still too far from Sydney, from the place where decisions and economy was growing. And recession came 1930s. A plan was approved by a council at the time, Stroud Council, in 1918. So it was approved. Walter Burley Griffin was directly involved in subdividing, in doing the subdivision surveying. And interestingly, that is the place where he first met Aboriginal people. So he first met Aboriginal, and then he was impressed by their connection with the land, connection with the nature. He was from Marion as well, were big fans, so to say, of Australian nature. They despised the European influences in Australian nature and even in design. So they were looking for finding the original Australian expression of building the cities and building the homes and building, not just living.
Wow. So more than a century on, what's the level of development at North Arm Cove?
Beginning of this week, on the 6th of May, was 106th anniversary of this approval being given for a subdivision. And 106 years ago, 6 years later, we have a village. So the basically whole area is divided in a village that has a zoning approval for urban for rural village. And it's people. There are about 400 lots. Altogether, there are about 4,000 lots in the area. So 3,500 are prohibited lots. Don't have a prohibition of electric building a dwelling.
Why is that? Why is there no dwelling entitlements on those 3,500 blocks?
Mostly because there was never attempt to actually build bring the infrastructure. So in order to build properly subdivision, you have to have a sanitation. So you have to have a water, you have to have running water, you have to have a proper sewer and sewage system. That was at the time much easier to achieve in Karua and Tea Gardens. Unfortunately, that was also in areas where there is a flooding, there is a whole lot of other problems. So North Arm Cove was forgotten.
So you're trying to put it back on the map. The Mid-Coast Council refers to this in North Arm Cove as a paper subdivision. What does that mean, and how likely is it that a paper subdivision can turn into a real subdivision?
So paper subdivision is because there is no in the 1940s, 50s planning legislation has been introduced or copied from UK, and it says subdivision is not now doing the subdivision of land, just physically subdividing. Subdivision means providing the services, which is fair enough. For urban subdivision, you really have to have sanitation. Unfortunately, someone at some point has said, this subdivision here is off the charts. It's never going to happen. So we are going to make this rural land, and we are going to put a minimum lot size of 40 hectares to build a house. These lots are, 40 to 300 to few thousand, on average about 1,000 square meters. So our battle was to prove that with the new technologies, we can provide services for this land. It doesn't have to be brought from elsewhere. It can be done locally, and it can be cost effective. So we think that it's time to rethink this subdivision, rethink the principles that Marion and Walter have built into this subdivision. It's much better subdivision than anything that is being built in Western Sydney or in even on the outskirts of Newcastle. So I think that it deserves revisiting.
The North Arm Cove Ratepayers Association talks on its website about that this area, North Arm Cove, possesses immense potential for responsible and sustainable development. Those two big words there, Dayan, responsible, sustainable. How can that be achieved and yet still bringing in the infrastructure that you say is possible?
Yeah, basically what we are saying is I'm considering myself the expert in a sustainable development, in energy efficiency, in a circular economy. So we are, and those are all the principles or at least policies that are existing in our state, in our federal government's policies, and we are just trying to say, let's try all of those policies, and a lot of people are talking about sustainability. We are saying, let's try it. We are working with universities. We are working with the professionals who are experts in delivering this type of development, and we're saying, in basis for North Arm Cove in Walter's and Marion's and Walter's work is sustainability. Let's recycle. Let's redo this developer. Let's look at doing the circular economy based on development based on circular economy in this place.
So you've referred to your proposal to revive the Griffin's plan as back to the future. How do you see this as having a future? How do you move it forward to bring it into reality?
So what we are talking about, and not me, we have, Tatjana and myself have done 2 research papers, peer-reviewed, presented in UK, awarded, about our proposal to do a different approach to place planning. So even our governments are talking about place planning, special plans done for special communities. Each community is different. So we are talking about ways of doing the collaborative planning, inclusive planning, collaborative planning, but also then going through collaborative development. And then after that, collaborative governance of the place. At the moment, we have a complete failure from the point of view of a local community in North Arm Cove, landowners and ratepayers, who are contributing millions of dollars to council and not getting anything in return, not even a basic plan to do for 50 years or more. So we are talking about this collaborative planning, delivery, and governance, and we are talking about implementing principles of circular economy. We are talking about achieving that through organizing the community through the citizen assembly and citizen jury. South Australia is big on that already. So we are talking about implementing the stuff that is already being implemented in different parts of Australia, but just basically doing it, putting it together, and achieving and measuring the outcomes. So we are talking about doing the sustainability, but managing the social, economic, and environmental outcomes, and see when we are doing wrong. That's where we are counting on you, like wider community and journalists, and who tell us, you're doing wrong. Let's change something, but let us try. What we are trying to say is, we want to also explore the fair go.
Dejan Simovic, what do you think Walter Burley Griffin and Mariam Marnie Griffin would say about your attempts and the group's attempts to revive their plan from more than 100 years ago?
I would like to think that they would say, yes, this is what we were telling you before. 100, in writings of Marion and Walter, and in their words, so many things from 100 years ago are so actual, so valid now.
Dejan Simovic, it's been fascinating talking with you. Thank you for telling us about this plan, taking us back more than a century, and how you see this as part of the future. It's been lovely yarning with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Just if your listeners, if there is more information on the North Arm Cove initiative, you can find it on Google, and you will find much more information from history and for proposals and future, hopeful future.
Hopeful future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Dejan Simovic there. What do you think of that plan?